No, you're absolutely right. I mean, they've given us a story. They've given us another story, and finding our own story. This is why war can be an incredible, the art of war, the can be an incredible place to find oneself. If it wasn't for the Bosnian War, I wouldn't have understood anything in this lifetime. I was sufficiently fucked up.
Yeah.
It would have taken me a whole lifetime. But what happened was I was very lucky to get caught in it, and getting caught in that conflict and seeing the heroics and the people who looked after me. Because I started there, just very briefly, I started there as a DJ running a radio station in Belgrade. And I was on a gravy train. We did very well for 2 years, all these foreign DJs, and I was part of the team. And then I met a Serbian girl. I fell in love. And then the war really kicked in bad, and everybody left. And I stayed, and because I was in love, and this was my lady, and I was with her. And as a yogi, what I've learned, and which is at the bottom of what I do, is a very simple truth, which is thousands of years old. Wherever you are is a place you need to be, give up the struggle. Wherever you are is a place you need to be, give up the struggle. That means that if you're in the dark, don't do anything. If you're in fear, don't do anything. And what happens is the doorway that opens up in the bottom. If you just sit there, a doorway opens up in the darkness and you fall through. And it's an amazing thing. And I was caught up in the middle of all of this hell. And there was a story that shifted my ass. I got caught up in all the narrative and the conspiracy, and we had all of that in Belgrade long time before. I'm talking about like 93, long time before all this crap happened. And there was a story which I just read in Politica, which is one of the big papers there. It was basically Milosevic was giving all the money to the troops. The people in Serbia and in Belgrade and the other cities were all starving to death. There's no heating oil in the city. It was 22 to 25 minus. I was living with my girlfriend in a flat with a broken window, trying to stay warm as, Anyway, and there was a guy, there was nothing in the supermarkets except a bit of bread, a bit of cabbage and some yogurt, if that, because it was all going to the troops. So he was starving his own people, and an old man was caught stealing a loaf of stale bread, and he was caught by the owner of the supermarket. And he said, "Listen, old man, if you vote against Milosevic in the elections next week, I'll give you 2 loaves of bread every week for free." And he took the bread and he threw the bread on the floor and he said, "Fuck your bread," and he walked out into the snow. Now he walked to certain death, and that shows you the loyalty, but not only the loyalty, the inbred through the father to the son or through generations that people have when they control us. And they control us through our line, through our ancestors. I'm not saying that the control through the ancestors is bad. I'm just saying that sometimes it can be, we have an endemic root, and we can change all of those roots as well. We have the chance to look at it again. And it helped me see that I had also roots that were stoic, that were warlike, and caught me. And that's why I created that. I was in the middle of a war. That's why I was also in Palestine, because I came up through generations of people who went through wars. And that is why meeting people like you and other wonderful individuals that I met in my life, magical beings, helped me go, seeing myself. I think yoga was the greatest thing ever. I mean, I'm not talking about bloody asanas and pranayama. I'm just saying, just see yourself. Stop seeing the world and see yourself. The act of seeing yourself and going, do I like that? Well, maybe I don't. That's very interesting. And I think so I'm just talking about that moment, Mark. Just when I saw that, and I read the story about the old man in the store, and then I saw myself and thought, I'm no different. Fuck your loaf of bread. That's how stubborn I am. I'm bulldog breed. And that helped me soften. And as soon as it softened, just a little bit, things started to come in, because I built this wall. You know, we do psychologically. Like now, for instance, in my street, nobody said a bloody word to me for, I think, 15 years in this street. Now with the lockdown, people go, "Hey, how are you?" And it's a funny thing. It's like there's this little crack. So I feel, yes, a long answer to a short question, my brother, but I feel that there's a real hope here, real
Yeah.
hope. And how do we create more of that, Mark? How do we amplify that? That was another thing I was going to ask you.
One of the things that I've found over the, since I've been doing that, I mean, I've been doing this work a long time, but it's really taken shape over the last, I suppose, the last decade. And one of the things you said a moment ago is that, when you meet yourself or when you see yourself, that the word transformational gets batted about a lot these days, and I think I have seen it. I've seen certain things that can really help transform, but one of the questions that I explore in a program, and I do it with all the age groups, but I have to do it once I've got real rapport and once I've got real trust, but it's asking people, in the same sense of what it's like to meet yourself, is this idea of who do you choose to be when you're not being watched? So when I think about these, when I think about, if I say that to a parent that's maybe struggling to bring up their kids, or a parent that comes to me who's suffering from anxiety or has got caught up in that rat race that we spoke about, and they say, I just don't know who I am anymore. Wow. And it can be because if you look at the kind of wheel of life, they're going, well, I'm either someone's wife or someone's mother or someone's parent, or someone's employee. And then if you give yourself the gift of time, and it doesn't need to be going out, as I say, you don't need to go away in these things to go and find yourself, go and take a month out of a retreat to find yourself, because you're always going to be there. But if you actually spend a little bit of time thinking about, so when you're not alone, just some of these wee moments when no one's around and it's just you, and you might be doing something, you might be reading something. Eckhart Tolle would always talk about this idea of watching the thinker, being mindful of your own thoughts.
Right.
It's incredible when you give yourself that time to think about, so who am I and what do I really stand for? Not the stuff that I was brought up to believe by my parents or the ancestral stuff, but right now, when the chips are down in the middle of this pandemic, right, what do I really stand for? And that's why a big part of the program that I run is that we really explore two things. We explore what the stuff that we truly believe and the stuff that we really value.
Right.
Stuff that's important to us. And I think for me, one of the things that I do once we get through the program part of it, and this is to answer your question about how do we grow this and how do we get more of it, what I find is that these things, if it's worth it, they happen organically. I remember. I think what I mean by that is it's a bit like the ripple effect. When you throw the pond and the pebble in the pond, you cannot control the ripples.
Right.
You cannot control that. You can't contain it.
Right.
And what I've seen young people, boys and girls aged 14 or 15 that maybe go through this program, and it's not me that's I haven't changed their life. All I've done is I've created conditions for them allowed to meet themselves a little bit differently, for them to explore what they may yet become and why they do some of the things that they do.
Amazing.
And what I find amazing is sometimes you'll get the phone call or the message from the school or the parent that will go, young David's doing things really well now. Those wee boys that he hung about with, they're starting to be a bit more like him, because there is a simplicity, and it's the yin and yang. It's both good and bad. But if you're one lad, and I say this to lads, but if you're a young lad and you're hanging around with 5 lads that are a bit of an arsehole at times, chances are you'll be arsehole number 6.
Sure.
because as human beings we immerse ourselves in stuff.
Right.
But if you hang about with, if you actually immerse yourself in being something different, if you think to yourself, I don't think I like that behaviour anymore, I don't think I like that reputation, or I don't like that side of my identity, I'm going to do things a bit different. People, as human beings, we know this, but we're so curious about other people. We spend a lot of time watching them.
Yeah.
And what I love is that you then see people that go, God, I want to be a bit more like that. Not because you're the class clown, or not because you're the guy that is that is always in trouble, because actually that stuff, it kind of has a time limit on it. But what I notice is that when people choose something a little different, if people choose to be a little bit smarter, a little bit sharper, a little bit kinder, a little more creative, So I think these things happen organically, these powwows as well. There could be, you might find one person that sits and watches this in the next couple of days and goes, "Fuck, I want to make myself a bit different.
That's right.
This is an opportunity," and it might be. And again, trying hard not to bring politics into this, but we do need a shift there. We do need a shift there. Communities for me, and it's one of the reasons that I love working in Scotland and I love working in Glasgow. Some of the community things that go on in Glasgow at a grassroots level are absolutely incredible. It just takes you right back to that, what it was like even during the Second World War, when people would really, really look out for you because we had nothing. Our lives were at risk on a daily basis. And that idea of the community thing is really showing up, because I'm the same. I'm in a housing estate here, and although I know people to talk to and say hello to, there's people that, because we're only allowed to go out and have a walk, that's what we're allowed to do. Yeah. You're seeing people, and I'm that kind of person. I will pass a stranger and go, "How you doing? You okay?"
Right.
And that would be like in your street, and I know your street well, and I think I can imagine what it's like to actually just to lift the lid on that a little bit and go, "Fuck, we've been here 15 years and I didn't know who you were."
So, it's what you're talking about. It's community, and this beautiful. I mean, I remember coming up to Glasgow, because for me, without community, the human being is lost. We're communal animals. We're group. We're communal apes, literally, who stood on our back legs. We became sapiens, and without community, without our tribes, and the values of the tribes, the values. What are we passing on? I mean, when I came to Glasgow, because my dad, he was very well known. He's a singer, and he was very loved in Glasgow. I remember going to Angela's yoga center and to teach there. And this guy, this taxi driver, he was talking. I said, "Oh, my dad worked here." He said, "What's his name?" He said, "Frankie Vaughan." He wouldn't take a fare from me. I said, "Don't be stupid." Yeah. He says, "No, man." He says, "I love you, Dad." And my dad had died already, and he left me with, my pop left this beautiful thing with people that they loved him. And he always said that was the greatest value, that you could be loved by people, and you felt rich. You could just shoot the shit with somebody, just talk. Because my dad liked to talk about fishing and horses, and, he didn't want to talk about show business. He didn't want to talk about records or fame. He couldn't care less about it. And for me, that was a value that I thought, that's wholesome. That's really wholesome, because it doesn't put anybody else down. It lifts everybody up. And therefore, everybody's your brother and sister. It doesn't matter how much they earn or how much they don't earn, whether they went to university or they didn't. It doesn't matter whether they're successful or they're not. They're a human being. And I think for me, that is the next step in our conscious evolution, that we rather than, I said judge, you see, it's part of my programming, but that we see each other through different eyes, through eyes that are new, that are opened. And what's great about this lockdown is that all the stuff that people used to think was so valuable doesn't work anymore. All the values that they had prior to that, suddenly it was like, well, where does that go? So people are scrabbling around, and I know they're looking for the real stuff. Like I had this, I just carry on just a little bit just to emphasize that. And I think this is that's why I think there's a great hope, and that's why I'm enjoying sharing this with you, brother. I had a guy came to me, and his lady sent him to me, and the basically the therapy and the conversation was about his relationship with her, and she's paying for the consultation, and he's iffing and effing, and she's like this, and she's like that, but I've been with her now for 10 years, and la 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 la. So I said, "Can I ask you just one question?" So he says, "Yeah." So I said, "Well, you okay with this?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "Okay. Is she all women to you?" So he looked at me, and then he went like this. He went, "Yeah, yeah. but she wants me to do what I want to do, and I'm not sure what she wants. Blah, blah, blah. I says, look, why don't you just tell her she's all women? Stop iffing and effing about it. He said, but what if this and what if that? I says, who cares? The woman, your partner, wants to know you want her. Tell her. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But be definite. If it's wrong, you are wrong. If you fuck up in a big way. If you're going to make
Yeah.
it in a big way. What I'm saying is be a man, be strong, and say, this is my values. I love her. Not, well, she's like this, and maybe like she's like that, and blah, 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 blah. That's, every day's different. But what do you really want? What are the roots of your personality? What would you like to grow in your garden? Then plant the seed. To plant a seed, you've got to dig the hole, put the seed in, cover it, and water it. You don't go, would the seed like to go into the hole? Put the fucking seed into the hole, cover it, and water it, and nurture it. It may rise, it may not. But so it's this power to say, I am who I am. If you like me, fine. If you don't like me, what do I care? In the world of yoga, when I came out with Yogabeats, they put a fatwa on me saying, don't go to his classes. He's destroyed 5,000 years of yoga tradition. So I was this sort of untouchable. And then they made me a yoga elder. I don't know what I did to get approval, but it didn't stop me. And what I feel is, like yourself, for instance, you broke away from something that was giving you and your family a financial net. And I remember when you came to me, you said, I want to break away. And I thought, well, that's an awesome movement. It's full of risk, but it's the risk that makes you feel so alive. It's the risk that says, it's my life. Nobody owns me. I'm not a slave anymore. And I think that is what I've seen you pass to boys. And that's your magic. It's an incredible, and that's what I want to try and get across to people right now. It's like, whose life is it? You want that woman? Tell her she's your only woman. And maybe it won't work out, but for the time you're with her, make it true. Who knows what's going to happen in life? We don't know what's going to happen the next second. But I mean, I think that definite power to do that is what you got, brother. That's what you got. It's beautiful. Beautiful.
Absolutely. And I think, there's something that is there is a real magic, a real liberation when people of any age, I was going to say young people, but I see it in adults too, but when you actually really jump in the driving seat of your own life, I think it's like we either get dragged out of our comfort zone or we put ourselves out of our comfort zone. There's no halfway in between. And what I love, and I think it goes back to that question that you asked a moment ago about how do we grow this. I don't know that we can. But I think the more things that happen like this, the more conversations we have, and it's one of these ones, like it or not, whether you like the title or not, we are role models. We work with, there's a responsibility of what we do. I think people always look to, people look to you and I and people in our circle for certain things. But I think part of it comes because what we do is we make definitive moves. Sometimes we don't really play as much as we love to play. But what we do is there's an authenticity to it. This is Yogabeats and this is what we do. Yeah. This is the view and this is what attracts people to coming on it. And I think one of the things that shifts sometimes, and I remember I was at a Yogabeats, one of your Yogabeats events in Glasgow, and I was looking at you were trying to get people to pair off around the room of similar sizes. And there's not a lot of folks that are big 6'3" guys like me, so I was looking around at all these beautiful skinny yogis, and I'm going, fuck, I need to find an ape somewhere. In the back row was someone that's turned out to be a really good friend of mine, and someone that is a really good guy, a guy called Rowan Morrison. You maybe remember Rowan, the Thai boxer. He's a great guy. But one of the things that we were talking about was, it's amazing what happens when you shift this idea of going from blame to responsibility. You know, we can do this. We can do this thing. I've had this conversation with Ron Morris. I've had it with a lot of people that I do work with, but young people that come in a program quite often do this thing where they'll go, I'm not great at school because it's the teachers. You know, the teachers don't like me. They don't like my second name. There's a historical thing there, and I see it in I see it in women that I've worked with who have suffered domestic violence. You know, they will often they'll say it themselves. So I'm picking my words carefully here, but sometimes they talk about what it is like to be a victim and what it is like to do this blame part. But what I find really incredible, particularly for women that I work with, is that when they make that shift from victim, it's almost like going from victim to hero, because they do that. So this happened. None of it was my fault. It did happen. And what I made a conscious decision to do was to not let that dictate what the second part of my life was going to be like.
Wow.
So they then become accountable, and they realise, and that is the way I use that analogy of getting in the driving seat of your own life, is that, you know, I came to you for a couple of sessions, and although we were, you and I were doing other work out throughout Scotland and stuff, what I was digging for was almost like that permission to leave that person behind, because I was stuck in that, I was a director in a charity, I had a good salary, the work was quite good, but it was killing me. It was physically killing me. You know, as we've talked about this before, I have that, the condition of ulcerative colitis. And one of the things, I was talking about this very recently, but that condition really doesn't affect me on a daily basis at all anymore. And I think one of the reasons is, I have to show you this, actually, it's just over here, but this is the very journal that I had in your sitting across on that table, writing my feeling. And there's a part in it, and it became a mantra for a long time. But one of the things that you helped me to do was to actually visualize the condition of ulcerative colitis as a barometer of how I'm living my life. And it was that idea of, and remember you asked me the question, so when's it at its worst? And I was, had a lot more hair then. I've pulled it all out since then. But I remember sitting there kind of going, well, I'm doing too much, and I say yes to everything, and I don't get time to do the stuff that I love, and I don't. And it was that blame thing. It was almost, I would blame the job.
Yeah.
I would blame the job, and that in turn would then blame the condition.
Right.
And actually, when I thought about, and you asked me the other question, which was about, so when does it not bother you? When is it fine? And I'm kind of going, it's kind of when I'm being congruent with my real beliefs and my real values. If I slow down and literally smell the coffee, and I sit down and put my feet up, or if I sit down and read a book with Joshua, or Olivia, or if I just be still for long enough and I don't get caught up in the, I need this, I need this, I need this. And when I stop putting happiness in the future. So I remember it came the time, and I read the very last 5 pages of that conversation. I had to make the definitive decision of leaving that organisation, and it was a big risk because, for a number of reasons. One, my wife was pregnant at the time and didn't have a job to go back to. We had a big mortgage, we had a lot of debt, and there was plenty of excuses. But the reality is 2 to 3 more years there, and I'm not entirely sure I would have survived it. Whereas I went from surviving to thriving.
Amazing.
And I think that's because of 2 things. One, because of, and again, the support that you gave me to realise around my condition going from, it's actually, it's a bit of a gift, because some people don't get the gift of a disease that actually acts as a barometer of how they're doing. Right. So I have very, very few flare-ups, if at all now. And the only time that they show up is if I just cross that line a little bit and don't look after myself in the way in which I should.
It's the gift.
So,